Brandon Ingram didn't show up to the Pelicans' voluntary workouts in California. It's not great, but I'll tell you why his recent social media post worries me far, far more than him being a no-show. It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you on this Wednesday. The show is going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. We will be more regular starting next week, and we're going to be back to 5 days a week before you know it. But there's a lot we got to talk about this week and in today's show. So, of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So this is going to be a Brandon Ingram-centric show. And look, according to Shamit Dua, who I trust on all this of the In the Know podcast, he says Brandon Ingram didn't show up to the team's voluntary workouts in California. Not great, but to me, that really isn't that big of a deal. More on that in the next segment here. What concerns me is the social media post that he says. And he posted on Instagram, and it's like a preacher talking. It says, quote, "You cannot stay in environments where people don't know the true value of you. If you stay in environments where people don't recognize the value of you, you will shrink your gift to the size that they can stand," end quote. So I was on our Locked On NBA podcast. We're talking about this today on Wednesday. You should listen to that. Make it your second listen today. And normally social media posts don't concern me overall because, look, if a player unfollows his team or teammates, whatever, you're under contract, you got to play, and you do need to be professional. And for the most part, people do that. So to me, normally this isn't a big deal. But what concerns me about this is, something that I've said a lot on Locked On Pelicans, and now I'm changing my opinion on it. What concerns me with Ingram here is maybe a lack of self-awareness. I don't think this situation is going to get toxic, but the fit between him and Zion Williamson and Ingram with the team overall has not really been there, and he needs to change his play style. He needs to change his shot profile. And, listening to him at his end of season media availability, he seemed to have some introspection there when it comes to that sort of thing. But, now I'm wondering if that actually isn't the case. And when you go and listen to a lot of the comments he made, I think that's kind of where I'm starting to land on all of this. And that lack of self-awareness isn't good for him having the type of season he needs to have this year. And if the Pelicans want him to fit in and have the type of success, it's not conducive to that. They're going to be Zion-centric focused, and now you've got DeJounte Murray on this team, and he's going to kind of be the guy running the offense too. It kind of pushes Brandon Ingram, not to the periphery area of everything, but kind of, right? He needs to fit in more if he wants to have a big, not breakout year, but a big season with this team. And if they want to win all the games they can and have this roster reach its full potential. And him saying you cannot stay in environments where people don't know the value of you, you will shrink your gift to the size that they can stand. That's not saying that he recognizes that he's part of the problem here. The media reports came out during that playoff series against the Thunder that, he was like, Willie Green needs to get me open more. And if a guy wants to get a max deal, 4 years, $208 million, $52 million a year, it can't just be the coach who's got to get you open. It's you got to go and cook yourself. Struggled with that. His end of season media availability, where I thought he showed some introspection. He did say, he's like, I used to take more threes when I've had a point guard. It's other reasons for why he's not succeeding rather than him himself looking in the mirror and doing that sort of introspection. And him lacking that is what worries me about this. If he thinks he's a max player, that's fine. Think that, right? But the NBA has said no. The Pelicans have said no. Otherwise, he would have been moved or someone would have given him that contract. He would have been traded, right? Like it comes down to that kind of the NBA has said like, no, you are not worth that sort of deal. And he thinks he is. Okay, like I can understand wanting it, but at a certain point, you've got to like read the room a little bit, it feels like. And this post doesn't make me think that, right? Like, again, I don't want to read too much into this, but this is the type of thing that does concern me. More so than him not showing up and practicing and being involved with his teammates. And we'll get into that again in the next segment here. But he's got to shoot more threes. He's got to take more efficient shots. He's got to try and fit into the offense around Zion Williamson a little bit more. And it can't be where they're negative with Zion and Ingram out there on the court as it's been. That needs to change, and that starts with him shooting more threes. If anything, what needs to shrink is the amount of long mid-range, contested mid-range shots that he takes. But he seems to think that that's a good thing to do, and he's just like, I'm going to be me. And while, like, yeah, go be you. Like, we all want everyone to be themselves. You want to win basketball games, you want to get paid. That's not the way that it's going to happen. If he comes in and is like, I'm still me, I'm going to play the way that I play, this team can win, but they won't reach their full potential, and it's not going to be great for Brandon Ingram. He will get benched at the end of games, as we saw Willie Green do. He won't then get a massive contract, and as I've said, this is how you end up on a mid-level exception deal. More on that in the third segment and what it could mean for the future of Brandon Ingram, not just here in New Orleans, but elsewhere. There are not a lot of teams with cap space, right? Like, his options are limited here. And so this is the type of thing where you're like, wow, like no one is interested in me. I need to like make some changes. I need to do something, right? You know, if you're not happy with the way your life is going, just in general, you got to make some changes then to kind of help it along that way. And if you're not willing to make those changes, things don't just miraculously change for no reason. You have to be the catalyst for that change. And Ingram here is saying, I'm not willing to do that. At least that's my read of this situation. John Krause of Locked On Celtics agreed. Well, in general, I don't think teams unfollowing or following or posting cryptic stuff truly matters. This isn't a good look here. And I think this is worse than him not showing up. This is him stating, I'm not changing and I'm going to be me. And if you don't value me, I'll go find another option. Here's the thing with that, right? Like the Pelicans are saying like, go ahead. When I was talking with John on Locked On NBA, you should really go and listen to it. You know, he's like, well, this is like the first steps of requesting a trade. And I'm like, well, the Pelicans are trying to trade him. Like they tried to this offseason, right? Nothing materialized from it. The Hawks didn't want him. You know, Jared Allen signed an extension rather than get traded to New Orleans because that's what the Cavaliers wanted to do. So while I don't think this rocks the boat too much, this is him thinking that like someone else is going to value him. Like, the league has kind of collectively said like, that ain't it. You got to recognize that, and then you've got to understand kind of your place and figure out what you need to do to go and get the results that you want. But for Ingram, it's going to be a different shot profile. It's going to be fitting in with the team more offensively while still maintaining. He was good defensively last year, I thought. I don't think he was negative there, you know, while still maintaining all of that. So this to me shows a lack of that introspection, that self-awareness. That concerns me more than no showing. No showing's not great. We'll talk about that coming up here next, but I'll tell you why it isn't the end of the world. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, again, America's #1 sportsbook. We got something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game, and all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Look, the opening lines for opening night are already out there, so you can already bet that Pelicans Bulls game. Pelicans favored in there. Maybe just know they're going to win. Take them on the money line. Put down a $5 bet now for the Pelicans opening night, and then you get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. So visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We are on YouTube as well. And now for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. No offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts, including myself, in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm on there every Wednesday. We're talking Brandon Ingram. Get another person's perspective on there and what he thought about all of this. We also looked at which is the next star player to play till age 40, because Curry's coming up on that. LeBron James is going to hit 40 this year. And then we're picking a non-Celtics team to win the title. That's on Locked On NBA today. Make that your second listen. So per Shamit Dua of the In the Know podcast and the In the Know Substack, Ingram didn't go to California to practice with the team in their voluntary workouts. Is him doing this like an overall bad thing, good thing? Let's try and make some sense of this. I don't read too much into missing the time. We've seen Zion Williamson go through this where there were 2 years where he didn't really show up to anything. 1 year he had the injury, but beyond just going to practices and playing with your teammates and doing that, there's team dinners. It's a chance to bond and get closer to your guys. We weren't thrilled when Zion did that, even if I didn't think it was the biggest deal. And that's kind of my same approach when it comes to Brandon Ingram here. It's fine. It'd be better if he was there than not, certainly. But from his perspective, I understand it, right? Maybe he doesn't want to go through some intense scrimmages right now because he's trying to get a new contract. He's at risk of getting hurt and doesn't want to take that risk. Okay, I completely get that. But you can still show up and go to the team dinners, spend some time with the new additions to this team, even if there's not a ton, and generally kind of talk through some ideas and what you want and kind of buy into DeJounte Murray, who's kind of the leader of the team right now, it feels like. So it's not a great look. And look, Trey Murphy was there. He's going through a contract extension negotiation right now with the Pelicans. We expect that'll be done before the start of the regular season. Building chemistry is important. This is a really important year for New Orleans. So yeah, you'd rather him be there than not, but other guys have missed time. Zion, I believe, had to leave early. So did CJ McCollum as well. That's not the end of the world to me, right? Ingram's been here. He knows his teammates. It's not like he needs to develop new chemistry. You're like, hi, let's play some icebreakers and I need to get to know you because it's all new faces. It's nothing like that, right? He's, been here as long as anybody has on the team, and that's totally fine. Is he the longest tenured player? Probably at this point. Yeah. So it's fine. Not a big deal to me whatsoever when it comes to all of this, really. And I don't think this is going to impact team chemistry or anything like that, right? The other players still love him. CJ posted on Instagram, happy birthday to Ingram. It was the other day. If the players like him, if it doesn't rock the boat, it's fine. When Zion missed the whole year and missed those voluntary workouts, it was fine. He was still with the team. They still loved him. And look at his career now. It didn't really derail anything. Ultimately, missing voluntary workouts to kind of focus on your own thing is fine if that's really what you want to do. For a rookie, that might be a different story, but for someone who is established as Ingram is, I'm not really concerned about that sort of thing. Again, to me, the bigger thing is the lack of self-awareness when it comes to him playing on the court and fitting in with the rest of the team, because it just finally hit a point this past year where it was too clunky to be able to ignore it. And truthfully, to me, that's kind of on Ingram there with that sort of thing and the fit. If he changes all of that, that's great. If he didn't post on social media here, I would have done the show of Ingram missed the thing. Is that a big deal? And that's kind of how we would have done the show. And I would have been like, no, it's really much ado about nothing. But when you kind of put all of this in here, you can kind of see some, not disgruntledness from Ingram, but unsettledness. And I think that's an okay thing. He's still going to come in on opening, media day, which is about a month away, and be fine. He's going to play in preseason on opening night if he's still here, and he's going to play how he's going to play, but he's not going to refuse to sub in. He's not going to hold out or anything like that. He's not going to do things that upset the other players or anything like that. They all like him. And, if he doesn't fit in on the court, Willie Green's going to pull him. You have Murray, who provides you a little bit of insurance with that. You want to give Trey Murphy more minutes. You still have Herb Jones. They like Green, the newest addition to the team as well. So this to me is not something that will really impact the roster at all. If he comes in and is like, I want to be traded, they're trying to trade him. So a trade request doesn't really scare me. That doesn't worry me whatsoever when it comes to, his level of play or his unhappiness here. And ultimately, if you want that new contract, it's going to be play and play well, and more on that in the next segment coming up here in Locked On Pelicans. So overall, I think when guys miss these voluntary things, it's no big deal, right? Like if DeJounte Murray had skipped all this and there was zero way that he was going to do it because that dude is doing everything he can this offseason. You see the picture of him and Lil Wayne. If he wasn't going to try and get to know his new teammates or fit in or kind of be the leader that, they traded for and wanted him to be, that would be the type of thing that I'm like, hey, wait, what? That's kind of concerning. But Ingram, who's been here as long as anybody, who's played minutes with Zion, CJ, all of the guys here, it's fine. He doesn't need to go to dinner with them and be like, so how are you? Like, tell me about your summer, right? And I'm sure they've all been texting. They have all been texting. And it's ultimately going to be an okay thing, right? And Zion has ghosted the team before. And that wasn't the end of the world. It didn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things as long as Zion was healthy and playing to the best of his ability. And you've seen him do that. If Ingram stays healthy, doesn't miss 10 games at a time, 20 games like 2 years ago, that's the type of thing that I find bigger. I don't care about this. Just go out and play, and you can take the entire summer off as long as you're doing the right things. And it's also not like Ingram isn't working out. He's working with his own people. He's working on, things like conditioning, developing, trying to add to his game what he needs to add. And as long as he's doing that, and hopefully it's the right things, the social media posts maybe say otherwise, then we're all good here. All good here. And I understand where he is coming from. Maybe just needs a little bit of distance, does feel a little bit burnt. But as long as he comes around, so there's time to kind of change the perception on this. As long as he comes around by the start of the regular season, start of training camp or so, that's the most important thing. And if he does that, everything's going to be all right in my book, probably all right in your book too, when it comes to all of that. And look, in my opinion, truthfully mean this, not just as like a Pelicans fan and want it for the team. If Ingram wants to earn money, like the biggest amount of money that he can get, it's gonna be shooting threes and playing well around Zion Williamson. Like that is truly the path, and I will explain why. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And please subscribe, like we said, on YouTube. Become an everydayer. Listen to Locked On Pelicans Monday through Friday. We'll be back to this. I'm just trying to type in for something and just found it. We will be back to 5 days a week before you know it. We'll be back to 5 days a week before the start of media day. We'll be breaking down media day, training camp, preseason. Like it's here before you know it. So let's get ready to go. I hope you've been enjoying the shorts on YouTube, which are cut up from the show as well, so you can get bite-sized portions of it as well. Share those with friends. Support Locked On Pelicans any way that you can. So we're talking about Brandon Ingram here. And one of the things that I, think is, again, that lack of self-awareness really might not be a great thing. The bigger thing is, like, if he wants to earn the type of money that he wants to earn, and look, $208 million on a 4-year extension just doesn't seem like it's going to be realistic no matter what. Even if he completely changed the shot profile and all of that this season, I don't think anyone's still going to give him that kind of contract. Maybe if he had done it last year, 2 years in a row would have been better, but he didn't, and this is the reality of the situation. And we've done a previous show on Locked On Pelicans for the everydayers talking about like what deal he could earn. What would it look like, right? What is the most money he could get? We kind of broken that all down. But here's the thing. If he wants to earn a lot of money, $40+ million per year, that's an upgrade over where he is right now. That is, if he wants that, it's by playing well. It's by playing well and fitting around Zion Williamson. Clearly, no one has wanted him to be the centerpiece of their team, the guy that you build around, like the main guy, number one, right? Otherwise, he would have been traded and someone would have done it. Like teams would have jumped on the chance to trade for him then. Probably because he would have been cheaper than normal, but they didn't. So he's at most going to be kind of like 1B, 2, if you're looking at the hierarchy pecking order on a roster, right? You've got to fit around another star at least a little bit. Play into the team and help them win games. If he does that, that's how he earns it. Look, if the Pelicans finish with a top 4 seed because Ingram shot more threes, took more shots at the rim, played good defense and did all the things that we want to see from him, they're not going to just let him walk or cheap him in free agency. He might not get a max deal at $208 million, but can he get 185 over 4 years? Yes, and that's a whole lot of money. It's not going to be the max. That is gone, and that's got to be on his agents, the representation, to kind of get that through to him. They do that, that'll be fine, but he could earn $47 million a year, $46 million a year. It's good money, right? It's not the 52, certainly, but that's better than the mid-level exception. There are maybe going to be 4 teams with cap space next season. It's the Nets, the Rockets, the Wizards, and the Spurs, and that's not factoring in some other things that takes the money away from them. Spurs aren't going to sign him. Rockets aren't going to sign him. Maybe the Nets, but do you want to go to that team? And maybe they don't want him because they're trying to tank. And then the Wizards, right? You can go put up good stats on the Wizards and never make the playoffs. We've seen other teams do that, or other players do that, right? It's Bradley Beal's kind of career here. I don't think that's what Ingram wants. If he wants the money and to kind of get the winning and the accolades, he can do it here in New Orleans and he'll get paid. They're not going to let him walk over, $2-3 million if it means keeping him intact when he just had his best season next to Zion Williamson. Other teams, right? If he wants to go to a winning situation, if he wants a team to trade for him and the Pelicans facilitate a sign-in trade for around $45 to $48 million a year, he's not going to go where they're like, you're the number one guy, take all the shots you want. You're going to have to go to another team that fits around someone else. Maybe he has that kind of year this year and goes to the Golden State Warriors, even though we've really ruled them out for a variety of reasons. But show that you can work around Steph Curry and that you're not trying to take away from Steph Curry, right? If we look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, show them you can fit in with Donovan Mitchell and you're not going to take away from Donovan Mitchell, right? Same thing with a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves. Are you going to fit around Anthony Edwards or are you going to clash with him? Those are the type of situations that he would find himself in, and no team seems to be willing to take that risk right now because they're worried about his play style. Change the play style, earn slightly less money than what you would have gotten at the full max of $208 million, but that is still a significantly better situation than it would be if you are going the route of trying to get a payday in free agency. You rarely see, outside of Paul George, and that is a fluke situation, a very much an asterisk outlier kind of situation. You rarely see players change teams in free agency, go to a winning team and get a max deal. It's extending trades. It's an extension, then you get traded later. Everyone is re-upping with their current team. When you look at the top free agents for next year, majority of them have already signed extensions with their current team because there isn't money out there and there's not a great situation to go to. And that doesn't mean that, those guys are taken, so they'll throw money at Brandon Ingram at all. That means that when the Nets, Rockets, Wizards, and Spurs use up their cap space or don't use it for whatever reason, the only way you can get the most money then is, and let's rule out an extend and trade situation, a sign and trade situation. The only way you're going to get that kind of money, the only money that's left then is the mid-level exception. That's the most a team's going to be able to sign you. The only team that can go over the cap and sign Ingram for something else is the Pelicans. So either it's here in New Orleans or a mid-level exception deal is what it's looking like in the next offseason. And that's not great, right? $12 million or $45 million next year. You tell me. It's obvious, right? Now, you could say that mid-level exception deal is a one-year prove-it deal. Doesn't always work out. We saw DeMarcus Cousins sign for that and then get injured. That is a huge, huge risk. $12 million guaranteed or $180 million guaranteed? He's going to take the 180. It's going to be that because no one is offering him that other contract that he wants. He can say, it's people not valuing him, right? Or shrinking his gift, but everyone's kind of saying that. And so if he wants to kind of maximize the position he's in now, get the most out of it, it's play well around Zion Williamson. It's play well with DeJounte Murray and help this team win. Have the introspection. take the threes, shoot at the rim a little bit more, fit in just a little bit better. And that is going to earn him the most money that he's going to be able to get. It's not going to be the max. That ship has sailed, it feels like. But you want 180? You want 170? Or are you looking at a deal where it's 120? You tell me. And the best thing he could do is fit in with this team. And that is how Brandon Ingram will get paid next season or not. That's kind of what it's going to come down to. The Pelicans seem like they have a lot of leverage here. And if Ingram has the self-awareness, the introspection, he can make the right changes and he can go and get a bag. If he doesn't, I worry about what that contract's going to look like for him. Some team will get a steal of a player on $12 million. Fully believe that, flaws and all when it comes to that. But that's not an ideal situation if you're Brandon Ingram and you don't want that. So hopefully, for his sake, he makes the changes because that's going to help this team win. That's going to get him paid. That's a win-win right there. It's a win-win-win for you, the fans, as well. That's what we want to see happen. Will it? We'll find out. Not entirely sure. Later in the week here on Locked On Pelicans, I want to look at DeJounte Murray in the defense of this team, probably in tomorrow's show. If you got questions, put them in the comments down below. Let me know on Twitter at NolaJake. The offseason's basically winding down. I feel energized here. I'm feeling good. I'm back in the studio. I've been doing some traveling and things like that. So we're back. We're ready to rock here on Locked On Pelicans. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back with y'all tomorrow. I forgot to mention it. Go listen to the Locked On Saints podcast. Make them your second listen today. Who's QB2? Ross Jackson's going to tell you over the Locked On Saints podcast. As always, I'm Jake Madison at NolaJake on Twitter. I'll see y'all tomorrow.